Hi all, it's Isaac from Child of Laughter, and this is the beginning of a new series on the mind and the importance of the mind in the Christian walk. And what prompted this was the last couple of days I'd been dealing with a real battle for my mind. And it hadn't happened to me like that for a while. And as I was preparing to go live, and I'm like, Lord, what's the word for the live? He took me through a couple of scriptures. And I realized that the mind is so important in the Christian walk. So by the grace of God, these are just going to be short videos on the mind and some scriptures and strategies to make sure that we're cultivating the right conditions of our hearts, because what we let into our minds will eventually start to resonate in our hearts. That's why the Bible says, be renewed or be transformed by the renewing of your minds. Notice transformation begins with a renewed mind. So that means it's possible to have an unrenewed mind. Okay. So I want to speak about Romans 8 to begin this series. And Romans 8, while I'm speaking, I'll just turn to it. Romans 8 speaks about the mind governed by the flesh and the mind governed by the spirit. Starting with 6. The mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the spirit is life and peace. So notice that the mind, the Lord told me one time, he said, the mind is the interface between the spiritual and the physical. In other words, the mind is a neutral ground. The mind is not inherently bad or good. It's who's governing the mind that's important. So notice in Romans 8, verse 6, it says, the mind governed by the flesh. And then it talks about the mind governed by the spirit. So as Christians, we want to be those whose minds are governed by the spirit, not the flesh. So the governor of your mind is important. And somebody will ask, well, how can I have my mind be governed by the spirit? Well, 7 says the mind governed by the flesh is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. And I believe that a part of that is submission to God's will. But we'll talk about that more in the next video. Love y'all. I just pray that this is a blessing to y'all.